right, it's 5 o'clock, so we'll get started. Welcome to the elementary Hope Reopening Forum. We'll be discussing questions that you might have about the reopening of schools at the elementary level. Today we have West Sand Lake Elementary Principal, Mrs. Kyer, Post and Kill Elementary Principal, Mr. Gella, and unfortunately, the Miller Hill Sand Lake Elementary Principal, Mr. Simpson, had a prior commitment late and won't be able to join us. This does have a 1-hour time limit. The middle school begins at 6 o'clock p.m. So if you would like to ask any questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can type them into there, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can in the next hour. We'll jump right in and start with one of the more frequent questions that we've been receiving lately, and that is, if a student is choosing full virtual learning, will their needs change regarding school supplies?
All right. Sorry. Ms. Kyer and I are trying to navigate who's going to answer here. So bear with us for tonight. Thank you for joining us. My name is Joshua Gella. I'm the principal of Post and Kill, and we appreciate you taking the time to ask those questions that you have regarding our reopening plans so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. So to kind of get started with the question about supplies, I guess when we look at supply lists, and I know some have been posted, some have gone out already, I think that in virtual learning, certainly, there will be certain supplies that are needed in order to be able to accommodate learning. So those supplies, if not available at home, may need to be, but I don't know necessarily that there would be any additional supplies during the virtual learning than there would be in the classroom. Ms. Kyer, do you have anything to kind of add to that?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you. We'll take the next one, Brian.
If a student stays home for virtual learning, can parents expect instruction to kind of stay the same course as if they were in person?
I think instruction would look, a little bit different. Naturally, face-to-face instruction is different than virtual instruction. We have a schedule that's set up. Our intention and our goal would be that the person doing the teaching at that grade level would have common planning time with the teachers at the grade level within the school setting so that they could make sure themes are being followed, standards are being addressed. But I do think it does look a little bit differently. In a classroom, you may be able to go and work with a small group. In a virtual, you still may be able to do that, but your small group would be virtual while the teacher could be in another small group. Josh, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think from an instructional standpoint, I think what we're really looking for in both in person, but also in virtual, is that, the variety of learning that can happen, whether it's, direct instruction that's being provided in a virtual manner, or whether it's some independent work time, or whether it's some small group or some feedback. I think feedback is key regardless of which option we're talking about, and being able to create some of those opportunities in a virtual setting are important. So it will be aligned, I think is probably the best word that we would want to use to what's happening in in-person instruction. But delivery is certainly going to be slightly different. And with that, likely to be some adjustments or differences, I guess, between the two models. But our plan is to provide that opportunity for that virtual teacher as well as the in-person teachers to have some time to collaborate together to make sure that we're providing what we need for all of our students.
How long will recess be at the elementary level, and what will that look like this year?
Recess is scheduled to be 30 minutes long at each grade level. Usually a cohort of students go out together, but example, like first grade might go out all together, and there's 3 sections. We would probably divide the the outdoor space into 3 different sections and kind of rotate during the week so that, everybody has a chance to play on some of the equipment, or other kids get a chance to play at some, socially distanced games. So we would be rotating it, but not keeping the entire first grade together. We'd be keeping the classroom cohorts together.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent kind of way to summarize that type of question. I think the only other thing that we would add is that we're really looking to promote hand washing this year. So creating opportunities before and after recess for that is just something that we would kind of add, but no real change to the amount of time that recess is or anything along those lines. It's more about separation and kind of keeping the cohorts together as we can, but still be able to provide that recess opportunity for them.
I will add, Josh, because we'll probably get this as a follow-up question as well. They will be able to take their masks off outside as long as they're socially distanced to have a break from mask time.
Can you explain how lunch will be this year? With lunch being provided in the classroom, how will students get their lunch? Will they be able to select it during the day? How is that process going to work?
I'd be happy to start this one, Josh, as well. It's absolutely a ongoing discussion that we're having daily. As far as what type of foods they're going to serve, I don't have that answer at this time. Colleen Wise, our food director, is still working with us. We're in a situation where some of those spaces and buildings will be used for instructional purposes. So children will not have the opportunity to go through the lunch line and walk through, because we don't want to interrupt the instruction occurring in that setting at that time. However, Dennis, Josh, and myself have been working on and getting the lunches delivered to the classrooms. Lunches will be in the classrooms at their desks with the appropriate social distancing measures that we're expected to take. And they will obviously not have to wear their masks during their lunchtime. But once they got out of their seat and threw their lunch away and did their hand washing, that those times that they go out of their, I keep calling their personal space, their personal island. Once they leave their island, they need to put the mask on. But they will be eating in the classrooms.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, and I think Laura had a great response to that. But the only other thing is that this is still obviously is a pretty significant change from how operations typically are. So there's still a lot of moving parts to this that we're still trying to navigate and work with staff, both cleaning staff as well as staff within our building to be able to, and teachers to be able to navigate this type of situation. But it's a process that, as Laura mentioned, all 3 buildings are working together very well to try to come up with a plan that supports students, provides them that opportunity to have that break from the day, give them that opportunity to eat, give them that opportunity to have, the masks off, but still do it in a safe manner that supports, the classroom environment that we're really looking to build this year. So, it's still a work in progress, and we're going to continue to navigate it as we move forward here.
Since we started, we've had a number of new people come on, so I just want to remind everybody, if you have a question, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. Just click that and you can ask your question in there. And we're also recording this, so if you missed anything at the beginning, this will be posted on our website tomorrow. Next question. Can my child wear a face shield, or are there preferred face coverings that the district requires?
There are not preferred face coverings. If you look at the, it's actually on our website under the FAQs. Basically, any type of covering that they choose to, whether it's a bandana, whether it's a household made one, whether it's like the one behind Mr. Gella in the picture behind him, that is fine as well. So, or if they want a shield, that is fine as well. So you can find that information on our FAQs, but there's not particular guidelines. However, if a student happens to forget one going on the bus, or a student happens to forget one at school, we certainly will have some on supply for them.
I do believe the guidelines do speak to a mask though. And then a shield is in addition to the mask.
I'm sorry, yes, the words face covering is being used.
Yeah.
Can you explain how pickup and drop off will work this year and how it's different from the previous years?
Okay, I'll take this one on first, Mr. Gella. A lot depends on the results from the survey that we're asking, so we can know how many parents will be picking up or dropping off. A lot is dependent on how many children go to childcare. As Dr. Franchini shared last night in his presentation, that some of our locations, you know, I wish I could change and have the front of my building being the parent door, but the buses can't get through the other circles. So we do have some limitations. It's certainly something that we are continuously working on, and we'll need to continue working on as soon as we get the results from the survey that you've been asked to fill out.
And that kind of is the same answer here. I guess I could kind of play the new card at post and kill and say that I don't know what normal parent pickup looks like or parent drop off. But there are definitely plans that we're looking into to try to understand how we can make that better than it has been in the past. And we're working and speaking with, you know, staff and folks here who have been a part of that before, as a way to try to come up with a system that is best for students and families here, both those riding the school bus or getting dropped off. And just kind of, I guess, finish up that question. Once these models kind of get figured out as we go, Laura mentioned that we're really looking for that additional information that we're getting from the survey. So filling out and completing that survey is, I believe that it's due tomorrow evening, will get us the information that we need in order to be able to start moving that process forward. And then once we're able to create a more definitive process, we certainly will be sharing that out with our families.
We've had a couple of questions come in about the learning platform, specifically Seesaw. And they would like to know if students will need to bring tablets and what type of software is required for this.
We will be using Seesaw at the K through 2nd grade level. Google Classrooms will be used from 3 to 12th grade. At this point in time, we are not asking people to bring their own devices to school. I've spoken with Mrs. Burdick, who happens to be our district technology coordinator, and it is very hard for her to manage out of school devices and in-school devices at the same time. We did find out some good news yesterday that the 6th grade, the 11th grade, and the 12th grade will be getting new Chromebooks. They were on back order, and we were under the assumption they weren't going to be arriving until October, but they are going to be actually arriving tomorrow. So the devices that were being used at those levels, because they are all one-to-one or going to be one-to-one from 6 through 12. So some of the devices that will be replenished from those that were already being used will be used down at the elementary, and we think we're going to be pretty close to being able to get one-to-one devices sometime during the early school year.
With students that select the virtual only model, who will be teaching them?
At this time, it's going to be a district employee who is K through 6 certified in elementary education.
And just gotta jump in on that. Again, when we look at these decisions and when we move forward with these decisions in more of a final way, in order to be able to make those decisions, we really need that information from that survey so that we have an understanding as a district what our counts are, what our numbers are at each grade level across the board, so that we can know how to best service, you know, both the in-service, both the in-school students as well as our virtual students. So that information is very important for those decisions to move forward.
So there's quite a couple questions about first graders having the same teacher that they had in kindergarten. Can we, I guess, just talk a little bit about if that's something that's going to be across the board in elementary, or if that's been talked about?
Yes, we have talked about that at this, during this summertime. And at this time, Miller Hill Sand Lake will be the school that will be looping. And at the other two buildings, it's not going to be happening at this time.
Will students have to wear their face coverings throughout the day? And can you explain the mask breaks?
Yes, the district's decision is that, that masks will be required and that the breaks are going to kind of be a building level decision about protocols. And we're going to work very closely with the teachers. We naturally want them to be a part of this decision making and include them into their school day and make that a part of their regular routine. There's going to be some videos that we're going to be showing on how to wear appropriate masks, why we're wearing masks, safety protocols, hygiene protocols. That information will be shared with the students. But again, at this time, in the classroom too, we can have, oh, somebody had a great word for it, but I can't remember. You know, there could be a tiny little spot in the corner that if some child just says, I need to get up a break, the teacher can say, yep, you can go over there and stand so they're not missing any instruction. Teacher can also be taking them outside for different breaks at times as well. Again, as I mentioned at lunch, that because they're going to be following the social distance guidelines, they won't have to wear their masks. And then at recess, but they'll be built into the day. It's built more of a building level protocol.
You'll notice we have a new panelist that joins. Mrs. Harrelson is our Director of Special Education. So our next question is, will assessments be held this year?
I guess I'll take that because that's not necessarily a specific question for her. At this point in time, we have not been given any guidance differently from the state. They are still saying that there's going to be New York State assessments being given. We haven't been given any guidance, but it's definitely something that's being talked at the state level and at the federal level. I believe state we have more control over because we have the New York State regents, even though that doesn't really apply to elementary as we're talking right now, but there's different levels of control in federal versus state. Dr. Branchini had this question last evening, and if anybody wants to go back and watch his response on that, that might give you some additional information.
So we do have a special education related question just come in. How will the special education services work? And does this area still have space for one-on-one or one-on-two group time?
So when we look at our K through 5 elementary students will be coming in on a daily basis. The IEP services and related services and programs will be provided to students as outlined in their IEPs. If they have a need for additional adult support that's listed on their IEP, we will ensure that they have that support as was recommended at their annual review.
Thank you. So what is the plan for if a student or staff member does have a diagnosis of COVID-19?
So I guess I'll take this one. Thank you, Laura, for taking so many in a row. So I believe in our last elementary principal presentation that we shared out, we kind of outlined this. And whether it's the Department of Health notifying the school or the school notifying the Department of Health, the answer really lies within the Department of Health. And they're really going to be the ones who kind of take the lead on that. So if the school gets notified of someone having a positive COVID test, the school nurse and the building principal will be notified of that. The school will notify the Department of Health. And then at that point, we're really going to follow the direction that's provided by the Department of Health and whatever guidance they give us within our school, in our district. So it really relies on that relationship between the school district and the Department of Health for how we proceed with that.
To follow up on that a bit, if a student does go into quarantine, will they switch to a virtual method and join a classroom that's already been in session in that model?
That is something we still need to work on, and we will continually working on that. No matter what, at some way, shape, or form, I believe they'll be able to continue their instruction. I'm just not exactly 100% sure what that's going to look like. Josh, I know we've had a few conversations, but do you want to touch base anything different than that?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to, I think, the question that we answered earlier regarding in-person versus virtual learning. And, you know, we're going to make an effort to make sure that they're aligned. I think aligned was the word I used earlier, and try to maintain some alignment. We haven't necessarily dove too far into this particular area of a student who has to be removed from school for a given amount of time. So we don't necessarily have all of the answers to this question or everything finalized. But I think what we do know is that the more aligned we can keep in-person learning and virtual learning, the more of an opportunity that creates for us to be able to utilize that in that type of a situation. But again, that's something that we're kind of navigating right now, and we're working on having those conversations.
And if you're able to tune in to Dr. Franchini again tomorrow during his presentation, he did get a little bit more guidance about if somebody is diagnosed and what they would need to do to return to school. But that would come from him if you want to tune in tomorrow for his presentation.
Can you talk a bit about special area classes in the remote learning format and how the teaching for these will take place?
I could start, or you can start. I'm sure we'll both have to touch upon this. It's going to look very different. It is going to be, for lack of better words, art is going to be delivered in the classroom settings, and the art teacher will travel from classroom to classroom. Same with music, same with gym, same with library and media literacy. The teachers will be going into the classroom and delivering those services. Naturally, they're going to do the absolute best they can to provide as many opportunities for the students, but it does put a little bit of restraint on their end, and the creativity in our staff, I'm sure, will shine in so many other ways.
Yeah, and I think this is one that, you know, obviously we're still trying to, you know, understand and kind of wrap our heads around a little bit, just because it is pretty significantly different. You know, the result of being able to bring everyone back in person really kind of limits the amount of extra spaces we have within our buildings. The confined space of each building layout really dictates what rooms are available in our in-person. So when we start having to utilize other spaces for classroom spaces where they were traditionally maybe a special area space, you know, we end up having to be a little bit more creative. With that said, I know that there's a lot of conversations happening amongst our special area teachers already. You know, teachers love to plan and love to be prepared to do what's best for kids. And, you know, our special area teachers are no different. They absolutely have the best interest of kids and are looking for creative ways and are really trying to, you know, I think we all are, Dennis, myself, and Laura, are all very confident that our special area teachers can rise to this challenge and be able to provide an engaging and enriching opportunity for all of our students.
So what will the class size be like? Will you still be able to have a normal size class, or will classes be smaller?
At the elementary level, depending on the outcome of the survey that you need to do, if everybody comes back 100%, our class sizes will be maintained what they normally are. Usually at the younger grades, they run between 20 and 22, and at the older grades, sometimes between 22 and 25. Sometimes we'll have a little bit of a larger cohort. But what has happened, we're able to maintain the size of some of those cohorts because we were able to take one classroom and one class and put them between two classrooms. There was a collapsible wall that came through in between, so we were able to use a much larger space so we could keep a cohort of students together. in as many possible opportunities that we can. And then in the other areas, we'll be working on our numbers, again, depending on the outcome, but we certainly are preparing for 100% return.
If GCC is continuing through the school year, will there be cleaning and disinfecting taking place before and after the students come in?
Yeah, this is actually something that we had a meeting with all 3 elementary principals, as well as the district office and GCC met last week and had a very good conversation about what GCC looks like in the elementary schools, as well as how do we bridge that gap between GCC and also our school day, and bridge that gap in protocols and procedures that both are going to be following, but also within that cleaning. And we've really worked hard. GCC has been fantastic and is very willing to help on their end with cleaning. And we've come up with some creative ways on our end, each of the buildings, to be able to move GCC out of any classrooms that would be used, and give our custodial staff, enough time to get in there and do some cleaning as well. So I think for the most part, our relationship with GCC, they're willing to help out as much as they can. And I think from the building principal side, we've really worked hard to be able to come up with a plan that we feel is safe for all those involved.
I'm just going to chime in a little bit because it could look a little different in each building due to the makeup of how the building layout is. But one of the things we did talk to GCC about is they have guidelines they have to follow as well. And GCC, for those who have been around, will look different as well. The social distancing guidelines will still need to take place, the mask wearing when they're indoors. When Josh talks about that we found different spaces, those are sometimes, depending on the building, a temporary space until we can get the classroom turned around to be cleaned. We do have some large numbers in different buildings of GCC, and we're certainly going to partner with them to provide the community exactly what they need for their children, and so they can continue back in the workforce themselves.
Will students, specifically in 5th grade, still have the opportunity to participate in band?
At this time, band, orchestra, chorus, and instrumental is going to be postponed for a bit, very similar to what is happening in the sports world. They've got to figure out the protocols, the processes in order for that to occur. So at this point, we're just postponing it for further decision making.
Yeah. And this is something that we knew we were going to be delayed with from the beginning. Every spring, there is the instrument petting zoo where students and families can take part in that. That got postponed or canceled, earlier this spring, which obviously we knew had an impact on our fall. So with that, with all the guidelines and trying to prepare for core instruction and trying to figure out building spaces, as well as try to understand the space and safety guidelines within band, orchestra, and chorus and the requirements there. We're at a point where we really just need a little bit of time to kind of reevaluate so that we can proceed as best we can. We all prioritize it. We all see a lot of value in it. So it's just something that, I think we kind of have to have a little bit more time than the September deadline to kind of navigate and come up with our best plan. So,
and we need the opportunity to collaborate with those doing the instruction to come up with their creative ideas and help share and make some decisions together.
Absolutely.
Will there be any large gatherings this year in terms of the outside public being invited in, or just grades that can have an author reading or anything like that?
At this point, there's not a plan to have any large gatherings. There's not a plan to have any outside people come into the school. We'll certainly be creative, giving them author opportunities through virtual authors, through virtual field trips. We want to give them as many opportunities as we can, but under the guidelines and the safety measures that we need to follow at this time, there will not be.
Yeah, and I think kind of the shoot off of that answer is that we just are really looking to focus on how can we provide enriching opportunities for our students in the current situation. And I think that there's a lot of other opportunities out there, and we're looking, each building is looking for ways to be able to bring some of that enrichment back into the classrooms. We know that it's going to have a different format than, you know, bringing everybody down to the auditorium. But we are still looking for creative ways to be able to provide those opportunities and bring in some of that outside enrichment to our schools, as well as, in addition to that, also create those opportunities to build a sense of school culture and climate within all of our students. So whether it's an outside agency coming in and doing a virtual presentation, or whether it's individual buildings looking to build a sense of school community, we are looking to be able to provide those opportunities just in a new format, in a new way.
We've had a few questions about medical exemptions for mask wearing, and specifically are autism, ADHD, those type of scenarios considered medical exemptions. Is there guidance for that?
Yep, so in collaboration with our school physician, any student that parents would like to proceed with the mask exemption, they need to go ahead and contact the building principals, who will let me know. I will work with our directors of nursing and our school physician to kind of go through the protocols that we have in place to see if that's a viable solution for that student at that time.
For students who choose to learn fully virtually, if there's multiple children in the household and there's in separate grade levels, will their schedules look similar in terms of being able to have lunch at the same time, recess at the same time, just to coordinate everybody's schedule?
I think at this time, I think we're really looking to try to match the virtual teacher with the grade level that is happening within schools. So for example, if a fifth grade student elects and their family elects to do virtual learning, we want to be able to provide that virtual teacher time to meet with the fifth grade teachers within the building. That way we can help try to build that alignment and that consistency of program between the two. So if that fifth grader had a sibling in second grade, they may not necessarily have the exact same schedule. But again, the priority that we're looking to, or what we are looking to prioritize, is giving those virtual teachers time to connect with grade level teachers that they're assigned, so that we can build as similar and consistent programs as we can. Ms. Kyer, anything else on that one?
No, I was a little tiny bit confused about where the question was. So actually, Brian, can you repeat it just so I can think if I have more input on that?
Sure. The question was for students who are fully virtual and there's more than one student in the household, different grade levels. They're trying to see if they could coordinate schedules. So if there's your one student might have lunch at a different time or recess at a different time. If those time slots don't match up, it might be harder for a parent who chooses that model.
I would like to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, I think depending on when we get that information, I don't want to say anything's impossible. I think knowing who the virtual are, knowing who the families are, I'm not sure yet, because we're continuing to have to build once we find out what our numbers are. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to rule anything out. I just, like I said, I don't have a 100% answer with that yet.
I do want to just take this moment to point out that virtual learning, which, you know, those who are opting out of our 100% in-person return, they will be doing virtual learning. That is actually different than our remote learning plan that we submitted to the state. The remote learning plan is when 100% of students would be remote due to a school closure. So I just want to point out that is a different schedule. That remote learning is different than our virtual learning schedule. In our remote learning schedule, that is a much more aligned for siblings to have similar times in their day for instruction and lunch and things of that nature. So I just want to be very clear that our virtual opt-out of 100% return learning is different than our full remote learning plan.
Will students have access to hand sanitizer throughout the day?
Yes, the district has purchased several hand sanitizers throughout that will be put in my building, we call them pods, but in each of the grade levels around, there'll be hand sanitizers additionally in the classroom and any other spaces that they may be moving to, although they may not be moving to many spaces, but coming in and out of recess, lunch, before, after lunch, yes, there's plenty of hand sanitizers. Just let me point out though, in the past, we have had hand sanitizers put on our class supply list, the little bottles for their classrooms. While they're still okay, they cannot be transported on the bus. There is a safety regulation. I couldn't reference it, but just wanted to point that out to the families who were making their class supplies or purchasing rather.
Yeah, and I'll just add that all 3 elementary schools are adding those sanitizer stations. So regardless of what school your child attends, they will be available in all of the buildings.
Will students be able to see classrooms and hallways, just how the school is going to work this year before the first day of school?
That question was actually posed last evening to Dr. Franchini as well. It isn't something we had thought about. There is an enormous amount of work to be done that has been done and that continues to need to be done. But I think we all kind of like that idea. And we're going to talk about that as we get through the steps of what we need to get done. But I think that was a good suggestion, whoever made that last evening. We'll certainly try. It would be more of a video type. And Brian, it would probably be on your shoulders to do.
Thanks. If a student stays home for the first trimester but returns for the second trimester, will they join a classroom that has already been established?
We wouldn't be creating new classrooms unless, 50% of our kids were virtual and then 50% came back. That would definitely be a need for a different scenario. But if a child was returning, there would be placed in one of the existing classes or sections in that grade level.
What does a typical first day for kindergarten look like? Typically, it's a shortened day with parent involvement. Is that going to change this year?
Yes, that will change because as we mentioned before, out of the guidance, we're not bringing people into the building. However, we're going to be talking to our kindergarten teachers and maybe finding some other creative ways. Orientation has been done virtually. Parents have been getting for about 4 or 5 weeks. They've been getting different videos and different updates from the building levels. And so we had to change the way we did it. Yes, it will look different, but we'll try to maybe come up with a way where they can see virtually who their teacher is and do a meet or something way. Josh, I know you're.
Yeah, I was just going to add that actually we had a meeting last week with our kindergarten staff across the district, so all 3 elementary schools, and that was one of the things that we began talking about and brainstorming. So it's definitely something that's on all of our minds and something that we want to plan for and something that we want to be able to provide. We just know that at this time, based on our start dates, and we're just not able to bring parents in, but we are thinking of creative ways to be able to provide a similar experience under the current situation. So we have a very dedicated kindergarten staff who's very much looking forward to creating ways to kind of build build that rapport early on in the school year with families and students.
If classrooms are cleaned and disinfected on a daily basis, will students be able to leave their school supplies at school, or will they have to bring them home each day?
I'm going to go back and forth a little bit on this. We have been given the guidance that they can't use their locker at this time. But I foresee, and I still need to get some approval, some type of little basket. Certainly they can keep they don't need to bring their crayons and their personal items home each day. But, you know, naturally their book bag they'll be taking home. So it just wouldn't be, and we're hoping that maybe there'll be some other changes by the winter and they'd be able to use and have access to lockers. That's guidance we have to wait on.
And just to kind of jump in on that, obviously, if we're able to do something like that, we want to be able to take that time to kind of really explicitly instruct students on the proper way to use, you know, that space. Obviously, you know, part of the regulations and guidelines that we're trying to follow is not having students, a large number of students in a very small space. And that's what cubbies and lockers really create, is that opportunity for that to happen. So we're hopeful that if we're able to use them as the year progresses, that we can provide some guidelines and some procedures and put them in place and really explicitly teach students how to be able to do that in a way that keeps everybody safe. So we are still hopeful that we're going to be able to utilize that space later in the year. And we're just going to kind of stay tuned on that one right now.
All right, a couple questions about how you're going to fit all the students into the buildings. We touched on this, I think, at the beginning, but will additional spaces such as gyms or other areas be used?
I can speak specifically to West Sand Lake, Josh can to Poston Kill, and then I'm sure you could email Dennis Simpson for Miller Hill Sand Lake. At West Sand Lake at this particular time and day, because everything can change, we will be utilizing the gym, the cafeteria, the library as classroom spaces. And where there was AIS teachers, we've displaced a lot of teachers at this time.
Yeah, actually, Ms. Kyer is actually in one of our Post and Kill new learning spaces in our gymnasium for this tonight. So she's testing it out and it seems to be working pretty well. As far as Post and Kill goes, we are definitely going to have to utilize some of those extra spaces. Regardless of what it is, we really need that information regarding that survey information, because it can have impacts on how the buildings end up getting used. So, you know, completing that survey is very important to be able to help make those decisions as we move closer. But I think in each of the buildings, I think what were traditionally other spaces, they're likely going to be utilized as classrooms.
Can you explain the temperature check procedure?
Sure. We just learned a little bit about this today, so Josh and I will probably just share a little bit about the district has purchased, I don't recall the name of it, hopefully Josh does, but they are going to be mounted to entrances. So at West End Lake, both of our front entrances and our parent door will have them. And they are like a device bigger than this. And you just go up and you put your face right to it, and it automatically gives your temperature check. And the district did a great job because they had really researched a lot of them, and some of them you had to wait to calibrate until you got into the building or the location. Like you'd have to wait 15 minutes because if you were on a cold bus, temperature would be different. But they have looked and researched, and I think this device will be really, really helpful. So it will be at each of the entrances when they come. And prior to them coming to school, each family will be filling out a survey Josh is going to help me too, because word retrieval didn't come with that. It's like a health screening survey that they'll be filling out electronically. And we will be checking them prior to children coming to school, and then we'll have temperature checks done. So I think the health and safety component and the maintenance department have done a phenomenal job really looking into the safe resources.
Yeah, and I think Laura did a very good job explaining kind of how that temperature check system will work. I think the only thing that I would add to that is that obviously at the elementary level, this is going to require a significant amount of staff to be able to help support that it goes smoothly. And that's something that I know in each of the buildings that we're really working on, trying to identify who is available to help support this. Because at each of the buildings, we're going to have students who are going to be dropped off by parents. We're going to have students who are going to be bused in. And we are going to be trying to navigate that and trying to be able to get students in the building in a safe way, in a controlled way, but also in a way that follows our guidelines. So I think we're still hopeful, but the scanners that the district is looking to purchase definitely are going to expedite that compared to some of the other temporal scanners that they looked at. So we're excited about having a system that is quick and accurate and can provide us that safe information. But it is going to require a lot of system, a lot of process, and a lot of people at the elementary level to make sure that we're able to do it in a smooth fashion.
In a related comment, when children are not in class, when they're walking through the hallways, are there going to be markers on the floor, or what other processes will you have to ensure that children maintain a social distance?
We both paused on that. There's not planning to be a lot of movement. Yes, there's going to be some floor mats that will designate what the social distance measures are. We're going to definitely, as they're entering the building, waiting for their temperature check. That's where we've been focusing our attention right now, getting that piece figured out. And we still need to work on the other details about in the building for transitions. But since lunches are going to be delivered, the only transitions probably are going to be going to recess, because specials are going to be brought into the classrooms as well. But it's something we need to continue to put on our to-do list.
Yeah, and each building received those things, and we kind of, it feels like years ago, but I guess it was probably only weeks ago, that we were asked where we would put stickers on the floor for social distancing and things of that nature. I do know that even aside from that, and those will certainly help because they're visual and they are a cue, but even beyond that, a big part of our beginning of the year, this is something that we're going to work with our faculty and our staff with, because at the elementary level, it's really important to educate all of these new kind of social norms and how to behave in different situations. And it's important to really kind of get students to understand and explicitly teach why we're doing these things and why it's important to physically distance from others. So we're going to work with our staff, especially at the beginning of the year, to really try to establish these routines and these procedures in a way that's educational, so that students know and understand, the why behind it, and also understand, how to actually go about following through on them.
So if a teacher or a staff member does test positive, and is there enough substitutes to be able to fill in the roles?
That is something our human resource department has been looking into, and we believe, yes, the previous substitutes have been canvassed, and they the majority of them have shared an interest to return to the buildings.
If a child has an IEP or a 504 and chooses the virtual schooling opposed to in-person instruction, how will services be implemented?
Yep, so what we would do is, based on our survey results, it will help us to really align our services so that not only are we meeting the needs of our students that are going to be virtual and remote, but in person. So We would again follow the IEP that's written the best possible way we can. We would also have a conversation with the families if services were going to be different, so that there was a discussion so they were fully aware of what the different service might look like for their child.
We have a question that was a follow-up to our temperature check question. What is the procedure for a child if the scanner shows that the student has a fever?
That's a good question. Each building has been required to have what we call an isolation room. We want to keep the health office healthy, and so children who have their routines of possible nebulizers or medications or different variety of needs to attend the nurse's office not have to be exposed to that. So we each have an isolation space that we would be escorting the child to, contacting the family, and following the procedures for any child who's sick. And again, as I mentioned, Dr. Franchini did get some updated of what it means if you're not well and you need to return to school, what protocols need to be followed. So you can listen in on him tomorrow with that too.
Yep, and I just want to kind of just loop in that as I spoke in the first response, the amount of staff that's required to help support all of this. A part of that is to make sure that students, especially elementary students, you know, who may not necessarily clearly understand that they looked into the, you know, and got their temperature checked, and now they have to go not where they were expecting. We want there to be that familiar face in the building to be able to help support that student and kind of help ease that anxiety that they may feel. So again, you know, that's part of that plan and that procedure that we're really trying to work out those details, but we really want to make sure that we have familiar faces to help support these students as in the event that they do arrive here with a temperature and you know, do head to get evaluated further.
So way back at the beginning of this, we talked about parent pickup and drop off, but somebody would like to know if there's been discussion about staggered dismissals.
Yes, definitely. I know at Weston, like, I definitely need to think about that. We seem, even last year during the general or the regular school year, we seem to have about a third of our building being parent pickup, and it is a lot of families. So we definitely need to look into some other type of staggered dismissal procedures.
So we do want to kind of wrap this up. I know we've had over 150 questions. We couldn't get to all of them, but we do have the middle school coming up after this at 6 o'clock, and we can't be on at the same time. We do have one more question, probably the most important question. Will Post and Kill Elementary still have an ice cream social?
I can say that coming up later this month, we are definitely working to plan on meeting with our you know, parent organization to kind of come up with a plan. I know that's a tradition that's been here for a long time, and to be very honest, I was very much looking forward to it. So obviously, you know, a social gathering does have its limitations during this time, but we are going to certainly work to try to be able to come up with some sort of creative option. I think, if nothing else, and I know this question is very specific to Post and Kill, but I think the answer is shared by all. It's shared by Dennis at Miller Hill and Laura at West Sand Lake, that we are certainly looking for creative ways and new opportunities to be able to build that sense of school community across the district. So I'm not sure what it's going to look like, how it's going to look, but we are certainly going to spend some time thinking about it and coming up with what's best. You know, we do have to follow the guidelines, and if we can do it in a safe way, we can certainly look into that further.
I'd like to give each of you a chance just to wrap it up. If you have anything that you'd like to say to our parents and students.
I guess I just want to say that It's been a tough 6 months for everybody, for parents, for children, for teachers, families, employers, employees. We've all had it tough, and everybody has a right to feel the emotions that they have felt through this. But I just would like to express that we really look forward to having your children back. We look forward to doing the absolute best job we can, educating them in the condition and circumstances that we're under. But I believe in the Avon Park staff, all of them, and my colleagues, and I think we will do everything we can to try to make this the best experience. And I'm going to steal this from Josh's room. It says, "Stay kind." Thank you.
I would just like to say that, echo what Ms. Carr has said, we're looking forward to the students coming back and being part of our school atmosphere again, and the excitement that they bring with them, and staff are excited as well, and we can't wait to see them in a couple weeks.
I certainly, Laura did a fantastic job sharing that, and I definitely echo her sentiment. I can tell you on a personal level, when I took this position, I was here with an empty building, and I'm very much looking forward to students and teachers being able to come back into this building. With that said, we certainly understand that every family has unique situations, and we all have the best of intentions. So I encourage folks to, if you have not filled out that survey yet, to please do so. That information is important for us as we kind of move forward and make any of our final decisions. And I also encourage anybody who has follow-up questions, or a question that didn't get answered, or a question specific to your child, to please reach out to your building principal so you can make the best decision that you possibly can. Again, I think we thank you for joining us this evening. Middle schools and high school are following, and Dr. Franchini has another one tomorrow. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes, the last superintendent meeting will be tomorrow at 1 o'clock. You can submit questions to reopen at apcsd.org, or do the same as you did tonight and do the Q&A option. Thank you all for joining. This is being recorded. It will be on the website tomorrow.